Story 1. The Abandoned Circus. The small town of St. Anthony had a glorious past tied to the circus. For decades, the Joy Circus was the town's main attraction, bringing fun and magic to all its residents. However, a tragic and inexplicable event led to the circus's closure and the abandonment of its structures. Since then, the circus became a place shrouded in mystery and fear, with stories of hauntings and sightings of a clown's spirit circulating among the townspeople. Clara, a young investigative journalist, heard these stories and saw them as an opportunity for an intriguing report. Determined to uncover the truth behind the legends, she invited her friend and photographer, Lucas, to accompany her on the investigation. Together, they set out for St. Anthony in search of answers. Upon arriving in the town, they were greeted by a nostalgic and melancholic atmosphere. The streets were quiet, and many of the older residents seemed burdened with memories of the past. Clara and Lucas went straight to the local hotel to settle in and then began talking to the townspeople. "You'll want to talk to Mrs. Marlene," suggested the hotel receptionist. "She worked at the circus for many years and knows more about its history than anyone else in town." Guided by this advice, Clara and Lucas found Mrs. Marlene in her small house near the town center. She welcomed them with a warm smile, though her eyes carried a hint of sadness. "So, you want to know about the circus?" she asked, leading them into the living room. "Yes, Mrs. Marlene," Clara replied. "I heard there was a tragic accident and that the circus was closed. We want to understand what really happened." Mrs. Marlene sighed and began to tell her story. "The Joy Circus was truly a magical place. We had the best performers, and the children loved the shows, but everything changed when the main clown, Richard, died mysteriously." Clara and Lucas listened attentively as Mrs. Marlene continued. "It was during a performance. Richard was at the peak of his career, and everyone adored him. He had an incredible talent for making people laugh. But that night, something went wrong. During an acrobatic act, he fell and died instantly. The tragedy shook everyone, and the circus was never the same again. Some say it was an accident. Others believe it was something more sinister." "Do you believe Richard's spirit still haunts the circus?" Lucas asked, curious. Mrs. Marlene hesitated before answering. "Many people say they've seen his figure walking around the circus at night. I've never seen it myself, but I believe he might be trapped there, unable to find peace." Determined to uncover more, Clara and Lucas decided to explore the circus at night. They took their cameras and recording equipment, ready to capture any evidence of paranormal activity. The path to the circus was dark and silent, with only the faint moonlight shining in the sky. When they arrived, the sight of the abandoned circus was both impressive and eerie. The tents were in ruins, and the wooden bleachers were covered in vegetation. Clara felt a chill thinking about the joys and tragedies the place had witnessed. "Let's start with the main tent," Lucas suggested, adjusting his camera. They entered the main tent, which had once been the stage for many performances. The bleachers were empty, and the stage was covered in dust. Clara turned on her flashlight, illuminating the space as Lucas took photos. "Look at this," Clara said, pointing to an old poster on the wall. It was an image of Richard, the main clown, in his colorful costume with a radiant smile on his face. He seemed to be very loved. As they explored, they began to hear strange sounds, distant laughter and light footsteps. Clara and Lucas looked at each other, trying to determine if what they heard was real or just their imagination. "Are you hearing this?" Lucas whispered, nervous. "Yes, I am," Clara replied, trying to stay calm. "Let's follow the sounds." They followed the sounds to a small tent at the back of the circus. There, they found an old dressing room, still full of clown costumes and accessories. Clara felt a presence in the air, something that made her hair stand on end. "Richard, if you're here, we want to help," Clara said firmly. "We're here to uncover the truth and bring peace." Suddenly, the temperature in the tent dropped drastically. A cold mist began to form, and Clara and Lucas saw the figure of a clown appear before them. It was Richard, his face pale and sad, but with a look that seemed to be seeking something. "He's here," Lucas whispered while filming the apparition. Richard raised his hand, pointing to a dark corner of the tent. Clara cautiously approached and found an old, dusty box. She opened it and discovered a collection of letters and photographs. They were love letters, Clara said, reading one of the letters aloud. Richard was in love with a woman named Mary. It seems she also worked at the circus. As Clara read the letters, Richard's figure seemed to become clearer and more present. He was trying to show them something important. They continued to search through the box and found a letter that seemed different from the others. It was a farewell letter, written by Richard shortly before his death. Mary, I can't bear to live without you anymore. Tonight will be my last performance. Goodbye, my love. Clara read, feeling a lump in her throat. Clara and Lucas were silent, processing the information. He didn't die accidentally, Lucas said finally. He took his own life. Richard's figure began to slowly disappear, but not before Clara said, Richard, we will tell your story. We will make sure you and Mary are remembered. With that, the presence in the tent vanished, and the temperature returned to normal. Clara and Lucas knew they had a responsibility to bring the truth to light and give peace to Richard's restless spirit. In the following days, Clara wrote a detailed article about Richard and Mary's story. The report was widely published, bringing new light to the tragedy of the Joy Circus. The residents of St. Anthony, moved by the story, decided to restore the circus as a tribute to Richard's legacy and the happy moments it had provided. Clara and Lucas returned to the town to see the restoration. The circus, once a place of sadness and fear, was becoming a symbol of joy and community again. A new generation of performers and spectators was ready to bring the Joy Circus back to life. Story 2. The Party Clown. It was a beautiful summer day in the quiet suburban town of Greenview, and Anna's house was filled with children's laughter and shouts. Her son, David, was celebrating his 8th birthday with a party full of colorful balloons, fun games, and many friends. The yard was decorated with shiny ribbons and tables covered in treats. The highlight of the party would be the performance of Peter, the clown, who had been highly recommended by other parents in the neighborhood. Peter arrived dressed in a colorful costume and a wide smile painted on his face. He greeted the children and started doing magic tricks and balloon sculptures, quickly capturing the kids' attention and laughter. Anna watched closely, satisfied with her choice of entertainment. But as the party progressed, Anna began to notice something strange about Peter. Although he was doing his job of entertaining the children, there was something disturbing in his eyes. They didn't convey the joy that his painted face suggested, and his laughter, instead of being cheerful, seemed forced and, at times, sinister. Maybe it's just my imagination, Anna thought, trying to dismiss the uneasy feeling. However, some children also began to act strangely. They approached Anna and whispered that they saw Peter doing scary things when no one was looking. He was whispering something strange to me, said one of the boys, his eyes wide with fear. He said I'd never see my parents again. Anna decided to keep an eye on Peter without alarming the other children. She noticed that he was more interested in taking small groups of children to less visible areas of the yard. Worried, Anna discreetly followed one of these groups. As she got closer to Peter, she heard his sinister laughter again, and something that sounded like a threatening whisper. Anna quickly interrupted. Peter, we need you in the main area to cut the cake. Peter turned to her, his eyes seeming to glow in a disturbing way. Sure, Anna, I'm coming. As Peter walked back with the children, Anna noticed he was reluctant to leave the shadows of the trees. She began to suspect that something was really wrong. She remembered that the real clown she hired should have an ID badge with the company's name. Discreetly, she looked for a badge on Peter, but saw nothing. Determined to find the truth, Anna went inside the house and called the entertainment company she had hired the clown from. Hello, this is Anna. I hired a clown for my son's party today, and he's already here. I just wanted to confirm if everything is okay. I'm sorry, ma'am, but our clown hasn't been able to leave due to an unforeseen event, responded the receptionist, sounding concerned. Are you sure it's our employee? Anna's heart raced. Yes, he's here, but I now realize he doesn't have an ID badge. That's very strange, ma'am. Our clown always wears a badge. I suggest you call the police immediately. Anna hung up the phone, feeling a chill run down her spine. She hurried back to the yard, trying not to show the panic she was feeling. Peter was entertaining the children near the cake, but now, to Anna's eyes, he seemed even more threatening. With her heart pounding, Anna discreetly stepped away and called the police, explaining the situation. They promised to send a car immediately. While waiting, Anna tried to keep the party normal, but didn't take her eyes off Peter. A few minutes later, which felt like an eternity, the police car arrived. 2 officers got out and approached Anna, who led them to Peter. "Peter, could you come here for a moment?" Anna called, trying to keep her voice steady. Peter looked at the officers and then at Anna. His eyes showed a spark of recognition and fear. He tried to leave calmly, but the officers intercepted him. "May we see your ID badge, sir?" one of the officers asked. Peter hesitated and then gave a sinister smile. "I don't think I need an ID anymore," he said, his voice changing to a threatening tone. The police quickly handcuffed Peter, and he was taken to the car while the children watched, confused and scared. Anna breathed a sigh of relief, but knew she needed to reassure the children and the parents present. Later, the police explained to Anna that Peter was actually a man wanted for deceiving and scaring children at parties. Posing as a hired clown, he had a history of disturbing behavior and was being investigated for several reports of kidnapping and intimidation. Anna was shocked, but grateful she had followed her instincts and called the police in time. The party ended earlier, but the parents understood the situation and were supportive. They promised to talk to their children about the incident and reassure them. In the following days, Anna had to deal with the repercussions of the event. Some parents were nervous, but most understood that the situation was out of her control and that she had acted correctly in protecting the children. Anna also wrote a detailed article about the incident for the local newspaper, warning other parents about the importance of verifying the identity of anyone hired for children's events. The story of Peter, the imposter clown, became a warning to the community and helped raise awareness about safety at children's events. Over time, the memories of the party turned from a frightening experience into a valuable lesson about vigilance and protection. Anna and David continued to celebrate birthdays, but always with heightened attention to safety and details. Story 3: The Macabre Show. The small town of St. Thomas was in a frenzy. A traveling circus, known for its spectacular and mysterious performances, had arrived in town. It was called the Midnight Circus and carried an aura of mystery and anticipation. The residents, especially the children, were eager to see the show. But for Michael, a curious 17-year-old, the circus evoked a different feeling, a mix of fascination and distrust. Michael had always been drawn to mysteries and supernatural stories. When he heard about the circus and the rumors of disappearances in other towns where the circus had visited, he decided to investigate for himself. He joined Sophie, a paranormal investigator who was in town specifically to look into the strange occurrences linked to the circus. "Sophie, I heard this circus has something very strange about it. People disappear after attending the show. Do you think there's any truth to it?" Michael asked as they met at the local coffee shop. "There are many rumors, Michael. I came here to find out what's happening. We need to be alert and infiltrate the circus to see what we can find," Sophie replied with a serious tone. They decided that the best way to gather information was to attend one of the shows and then sneak into the backstage area. They bought tickets for opening night, and when the time came, they headed to the large circus set up on the outskirts of town. The atmosphere around the circus was electrifying. Bright lights, loud music, and laughter filled the air. Michael and Sophie blended in with the crowd and found their seats. The stage was grandly decorated with vibrant colors and mysterious props. But what caught Michael's attention the most was the main clown, who had an unsettling presence. "The show is about to begin," announced a mysterious voice over the loudspeakers. The lights dimmed and a somber music started playing. The main clown, with his white painted face and sinister smile, entered the stage. His eyes seemed to pierce the soul of anyone who met his gaze. Michael felt a shiver as he looked at the clown. "There's something wrong with him, Sophie. We can feel it." Sophie nodded. "We need to be careful." The show began with impressive acrobatic acts and magic tricks, but each performance had something disturbing about it. The audience's laughter seemed forced, and a tension hung in the air. Michael and Sophie watched closely, waiting for the right moment to act. After the show ended, the crowd began to disperse. Michael and Sophie hid in the shadows and waited until everyone had left. When the area was finally deserted, they started moving toward the backstage. "We need to find out what's happening here," Sophie whispered as they walked through the empty tents. Backstage, they found a completely different scene. The environment was dark and silent, with long, dimly lit corridors. Michael and Sophie walked cautiously, trying not to make any noise. Suddenly, they heard voices coming from one of the tents. They approached silently and peeked through the opening. Inside, they saw the main clown and other circus members performing a macabre ritual. In the center of the tent was a circle of candles and strange symbols drawn on the floor. It looked like an altar dedicated to some entity. "What is this?" Michael murmured, frightened. "It's a ritual. We need to find out more," Sophie replied, taking out her camera to document what was happening. As they filmed, they saw the main clown lift a dagger and begin reciting words in an unknown language. The atmosphere grew even heavier, and a sense of impending danger filled the air. "We need to get out of here and alert the authorities," Sophie said, realizing the gravity of the situation. But before they could move, they were discovered. The clown's eyes fixed on them, and he let out a terrifying laugh. "You shouldn't be here," he shouted as the other circus members surrounded them. Michael and Sophie tried to run but were captured and brought to the center of the altar. "What are you doing here?" the clown asked, approaching them with the dagger in hand. "We're here to uncover the truth. We know people have disappeared because of your circus," Michael said, trying to sound brave. The clown laughed again. "You don't understand. This circus is just a front. We serve a greater power, a power that demands sacrifices." Sophie looked at the clown with disdain. "You're playing with forces you don't understand." The clown raised the dagger, ready to strike, but before he could act, a loud noise echoed through the tent. The lights flickered, and suddenly a strong wind swept through the space, extinguishing the candles. A dark figure appeared at the entrance of the tent. It was a tall man with an intimidating presence. "Let them go," he ordered, in an authoritative voice. The circus members hesitated, and the clown stepped back, surprised. The dark figure moved forward, revealing himself as a police investigator who had been following the circus for months. "You're all under arrest for involvement in kidnapping and macabre rituals," the investigator said, as other police officers entered the tent and began handcuffing the criminals. Michael and Sophie were freed and taken outside the tent. "You saved our lives," Michael said, relieved. "We received a tip and were investigating the circus." "You helped confirm our suspicions," the investigator explained. In the following days, the Midnight Circus was dismantled and those involved in the crimes were arrested. The town of St. Thomas returned to its usual tranquility, but the experience left a mark on everyone. Michael and Sophie were relieved to have uncovered the truth, but knew they would never forget what they had experienced. Sophie wrote a detailed article about the case, warning other towns about the danger of accepting entertainment from unknown and mysterious sources. The Midnight Circus, which once brought mystery and fear, was finally exposed. Michael and Sophie learned that sometimes evil hides under the guise of fun and joy, and that vigilance is essential to protect those we love.